Help me grow, fast or slow, as long as I know you're digging for gold. Help me learn, soft or stern, as long as I know you're digging for gold. Life's a movie, the ultimate trip. You should have been told you'd be digging for gold. Hello, my friends. Dan Goldberg once again, as you know, and this is Digging for Gold, episode 59. Whoa, we're really moving along here. So don't forget, subscribe, go to YouTube, subscribe, and follow us on also Spotify, on Instagram, and TikTok. You can also go to dangoldberg.com, go to the bottom of the page, and click on all those icons to find all the links. Today, put on your seatbelt. Put on your seatbelt. And the flotation device is under the seat, right? Because I got my good friend, known David for many, many years. We're at the airport. I don't know if you can see this, but we're at the little airport. It's a little airport.
Little airport.
And we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but mostly about aviation. Because David was a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force, correct? And flew missions during the Vietnam War. He was in for 20 years.
True.
Yeah. And then became a commercial pilot for Alaska Airlines, also for 20 years. Man.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
That's I loved it. 40 years of flying jets, and I got paid to do it. And
Man, what a rush. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, when you take off, one of the questions that I always wonder is, if Julius Caesar could come back, if Benjamin Franklin could come back, what would they think is the greatest invention of man since they passed or since they were alive, okay? This is one of them. This has to be like, it would take them how many months a month to get from Philly to Paris on a ship, right? Maybe 3 weeks, whatever.
whatever, right?
Yeah. Now they can do it in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe 7 hours. Okay. It takes us 9 hours to get to Istanbul, or 10 hours. What's it like? What's it like to sit there before we get into all the very specifics?
It's depending on the type of flying you're doing. If you're in a commercial airplane and you are doing a transoceanic flight, it's you've heard some jobs described as hours of boredom interrupted by moments of sheer But no, usually it's a fun activity. You do have to pay attention, and just because you have it on autopilot does not mean you can get up and go wander about the cabin or go to sleep, or you maybe don't have to sit there with your hands actively on the controls the whole time, but you do have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And it's keeping situational awareness. That's really the big deal. There are times when it's more, when you're more active than others, obviously, takeoff, landing, descent, climb out. And those times you really are very busy. But at other times it's more relaxed. So to me it's a real fun job.
What was the biggest plane you ever piloted?
The C-5. I know for your folks listening, not watching, it's a military transport. It's basically the size of a Boeing 747.
Wow.
And you can fit all kinds of things in there, other airplanes and
Holy
helicopters and tanks. It was built to haul tanks, and it does that very well.
How much does that thing weigh?
The max takeoff weight on that was, if I remember right, 775,000 pounds. And it's made by Lockheed and Boeing, who makes the 747. They would go back and forth to see who could get the highest max gross takeoff weight. And,
wow.
the Lockheed would put some more weight on it, and they'd go up to 780,000 pounds, and Boeing would turn around and go, yeah, we'll watch this. And so it was a good competition.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, but this airplane, it does a great job. The C-5, and of course its little brother, the
Right.
C-17, which looks very similar. If you see it from a distance, probably the easiest way to tell is the C-17 has winglets on the ends of the wings.
Oh, those little things that come up.
Correct. And the C-5 does not. C-5 is an older airplane.
What do those little winglets do?
They actually decrease the drag that the wing produces. The airplane flies because of four forces: thrust, drag, weight, and lift. So when the wings produce lift, at the wingtips, you get these vortices, and that creates drag. And one way to reduce those wingtip vortices is with the invention of these little winglets. They're not that little, they're like 8 feet high or so.
Yeah.
And, I mean, when you see them from a distance, they look kind of small, but they're not that small.
So it's
yeah,
drag,
so
lift, weight.
Right. Yeah. So the gravity pulling the airplane down, the lifting it up, away from the earth, if you're in level flight, and then thrust, which makes the airplane go forward, and then the
Right.
drag, which stops the airplane from going forward.
I've been called a drag and by many people, so maybe I should be in the.
Well, it depends on how the use of the term, I suppose.
I guess so. I
Leave that
have to
alone.
tell you a story about. I was in an L-1011. Remember them?
Sure do.
TWA.
Yeah.
And I used to fly to L.A. all the time because I had stores out there, right? And it was my last flight. I had sold the company, okay? And the pilot comes out. I took the same flight all the time, so I knew the pilot. I knew the whole crew. It was the same crew. Unbelievable. So the guy comes out, and I always sat in the same seat. First seat, the first one. And he said to me, Dan, I'm retiring. His name was Jack Ford. I said, Jack, I just sold the company. It was my last flight. And this was in 1980. So he said, Dan, come with me. And I went to the cockpit. This is before,
Right.
And he puts down that, whatever you call that,
The jump seat.
the jump seat. And he introduced me to the guy, the FAA, and the co-pilot, and navigator, and whoever was in there. And he said, sit here. I'm going to show you what I think the future of Navy aviation is. We're going to have holographic instrumentation, I think. And so we get to a point where he says, there's L.A., there's San Diego, there's Phoenix. And I went, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
2.5 hours in that flight, I sat in the cockpit. That was it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. You're right. We, in the military, we did not have the same kind of restrictions as to who was allowed in the cockpit. And every now and then on long oceanic flights, in the C-5, you could carry passengers in the very back of the airplane. There were 75 passenger seats back there. They call them troop seats because,
Right.
if you had jeeps or tanks or whatever on board, you need the folks to get them off the airplane. So,
Right.
but if you didn't have that kind of stuff, then typically we would just take folks who were going space available on military flights. So we were coming from England back to U.S. I forget which base it was, but so we're crossing the North Atlantic, and we had just come out of UK, and there was a family who was in the back, and we asked them if they wanted to come up and take a look. So
Wait a minute. How did a family get on a military transport? Did they pay? Did they do?
no, the military dependents.
Oh, military.
Yeah,
Okay.
so these folks, they'd been based, the active duty member who was the dad, Air Force guy, he was based in England, and he was he was being transferred back to the United States. So the family caught a ride on our airplane. Well,
Pretty cool.
yeah, it was. So we're about 2/3 of the way across the North Atlantic, and we're coming in over like the Maritimes of Canada, and pretty quiet on the radio frequency. It was just us and Pan American flight, and their call sign was Clipper, which I always thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, we get the family up in the cockpit, and we weren't really bound by FAA regulations. So, we put the little girl in the headset, and she could listen and talk. And so I gave her the headset, and I gave her this mic button, and I said, "Here, just press this mic button and say, 'Hello, Moncton Center.'" And Moncton was the
Moncton,
name of the air
Canada.
traffic control. Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. Moncton, Canada. Yeah. Well, it was really quiet. So all of a sudden you hear this little girl with an English accent say, "Hello, Moncton Center." And after a couple seconds, Moncton Center comes back on, and he wasn't expecting a radio call. So he says, "Calling Moncton, say again." Nobody says anything. So a couple more seconds go by, and Moncton comes back. He says, "Hey, Clipper, I just got a radio transmission. Was that you guys?" Well, Clipper's not expecting a radio call, so he kind of wakes them up.
Right.
And they go, "What?" so Moncton and Clipper, "Well, I just got this radio call. It sounded like a little girl with a British accent. And I just got you in a military flight on frequency, so which of you guys do you think it was?" And Clipper's like, "Well, sure as hell it wasn't us." We're trying not to bust a gut laughing.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is great. Oh my God, that's funny. That's funny. Oh man, look at the size. Well, look at the size of the plane. You can't really see it if you're listening to us, or even if you're watching it. But it does take up a sizable portion of the table, right?
Yeah.
I mean, damn, it's even heavy to pick up. What about? And you've flown this.
Yes. Actually, about half my military time is in that airplane.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
it's
is so
a lot
cool.
of. You always were doing something interesting with that airplane. I've taken it to Beijing, Lhasa, Tibet,
Wow.
and I flew this airplane. I literally flew an around-the-world trip. We took off out of the base I was stationed at in Northern California, Travis Air Force Base, and we were going westbound. So we stopped in Hawaii, then the next day we went on to Guam and Japan. I forget where all we went, but they needed this airplane. Like once we got to like the Southeast Asia area,
Right.
they needed it, I think in Diego Garcia, which is it's this little tiny island
Yeah.
just off the southern tip of India. It's not. It's 4 degrees south, so it's below the equator. So we flew from Southeast Asia, like all the way, like through the Straits of Malacca. And anyway,
That's pretty
yeah. So we just kept going westbound till we got back home again.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
So but you refueled every time you stopped, right?
Well, yeah. Every time you stop, you refuel. Yeah. And
What's the furthest distance you could do on one fueling? It's a big plane. Must
Yeah,
carry
I'm
big,
trying to think.
big
Let's
gas
see.
tanks.
yeah, you carried over 300,000 pounds of fuel.
Wow.
If I remember, we burned like 20,000 pounds an hour.
What?
I
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of gas. Yeah,
that's
it's been a long time. I haven't flown this airplane since 1990, so I don't remember
Wow.
all the numbers. But
Yeah.
like you could typically fly probably 10 hours without refueling.
Refueling.
But we did a fair amount of air refueling.
Oh, that's
which
true. Yeah.
that air refueling a heavyweight C5 was the most challenging thing I've ever done with any airplane.
Yeah, because you got to be in a perfect, I guess, horizontal position for the other plane to, or whatever position it is.
Yeah,
It's mating actually in the air.
Yeah, you're 10 feet below and sort of like right behind the other airplane. So, yeah, and with the C5, if you close too quickly on the tanker, you push the tanker out of the way. The bow wave of the C5 is
Wow.
so massive. You have to close very, very slowly. They say the closure rate needs to be 1 foot per second, which is it's agonizing to
It's like
have that slow a closure.
You have to be a magician to do that.
It takes practice.
Yeah, but how do you practice?
Well, good question. Boeing, I don't know about now, but when I learned this skill in the 70s, Boeing had a simulator for learning to air refuel large swept-wing airplanes. And it was at their plant in Seattle. And all of us, when it's time to learn how to air refuel, that was your first stop, was Boeing in Seattle.
This
and
is just fascinating.
the large swept-wing airplanes want to do something called a Dutch roll when you air refuel if you're not used to it. So what happens is you tend to overcorrect, so you put in a little aileron to go this way, but because you're trying to maintain your position behind a boom, you don't realize it, but the airplane wants to turn a little bit. So now you put in an aileron to go the other way, and all of a sudden it's like you're doing something like this, and the wing comes up and you get into this rocking back and forth motion. It's called a Dutch roll. And it's if you don't know how to solve for the Dutch roll, you can be in trouble.
Well, while it's doing that, another plane is fueling you, right?
Not while you're in a Dutch roll, no.
What do they do?
Well, if you actually were connected, the boom for the C5 attaches right here just after the cockpit. So the tanker is up here, you're flying below and beneath it, and if you get into a Dutch roll, you're probably going to disconnect. Either the pilot flying the airplane or the boomer can disconnect the boom, because you don't want to be trying to air refuel while you're in a Dutch roll.
Yeah, because you screw up the other plane too.
You can actually snap the boom if you're not careful.
That's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good. So take us back before we get into these things, combat aircraft, okay? Take me back to what made you decide to join the United States Air Force.
It was simple. They would not let me fly their damn airplanes unless I joined the Air Force.
David, that makes perfect sense. It's a little too sensible for me.
When I was a little kid, my dad used to take me out to the old Philadelphia International Airport.
Yeah.
It was a little green one-story building.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said I was like 5 years old, and we were watching all these Constellations C-121s. And my dad told me, he said, I looked up at this airplane, I said, I'm going to do that. And I just had always wanted to, and I remember I wanted to be an astronaut, actually.
Wow.
And I wish, it's funny, when you get to our age, you look back, and I tend to more regret the things I did not do than some of the dumbass things that I did. And it's like I applied to be an astronaut.
Really?
But yeah.
What was that like?
I had come back from Southeast Asia, so I had some time in the F4 and some other.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah. And by this time, I was instructing at this little Air Force base in Selma, Alabama. And it was mid-70s, 76, 77, somewhere in there.
And we were still in Vietnam. Oh, no, Vietnam was over.
Yeah, it was
73.
over. Right, yeah. So one day in our little daily bulletin, I saw that NASA was looking for whatever, 7 or 8 astronauts or something like that. And they listed the minimum qualifications. And the minimum qualifications were really minimal, and I'm sure they did that intentionally. So you needed like 1,500 hours of high performance time, which I had. You needed a degree in, what we call STEM today, which I had. And I knew that I was God's gift to aviation, and certainly why would they not take me? So I got in my little right-hand drive MGB, and I drove from Selma, Alabama to Houston.
We had an MGB.
Yeah.
British Racing
cool.
Green.
Yeah, that was mine, yeah. Right-hand drive.
Yeah. No, ours was left-hand drive.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Yeah, ours was left-hand drive.
Anyway, so I get to, I guess it was Ellington Air Force Base, if I remember. Anyway, I get there, and I typed out my resume, and I drove over there. And I found the office to which I was supposed to go. And I walk in, and it's like there's nobody around, just the receptionist. Turns out that day was the day that NASA had taken the now completed space shuttle, which was out of Palmdale in Southern California, and they put it on the back of some Boeing 747 to fly it back to Florida. So everybody who was anybody in NASA was out in the desert in Southern California, not in Houston.
Geez. Yeah.
So it's just the receptionist sitting there. I remember she was in this large room, and just her desk. And, I'm a cocky young fighter. I walk in with my little one-page resume, and I hand it to her, and I say, is this where I go to apply for the astronaut program? She goes, yes, it is. And she takes my resume and she scans it briefly, and she turns it over. And I will never forget this. She looks back and forth like this. She goes she says, do you see this stack of she had a stack of resumes on her desk. It was like 18 inches high.
Wow.
And these things were thick. They were like binders. She says, these are from guys with PhDs in astrophysics and thousands of hours of flight test time. She says, we need like 7 or 8 whatever it was. She says, there's no way you're going to get this. She says, but what you will get is a physical that will stick with you forever. She says, and when they find something wrong, and they always find something wrong, she says, not only wouldn't you be an astronaut, but you're going to be grounded medically unless they can fix it. She says, now, do you still want me to take your application? I took my application back. I went, thank you very much. Backed out of her office. So that's my shot at being a... Now, if I had gone to test pilot school, which I think I could have gotten into test pilot school, and then become a test pilot and done it the right way, I might have had a shot. But just being cocky and young, it's like, no, man, you're not getting this.
No. Oh, God. Yeah. So you get out of college. Where'd you go to college?
Drexel.
I went to Drexel, right here, Philly. Okay. Was it the Institute of Technology then, or university?
It was. I was the first class. Mine was the first class to graduate from Drexel University.
Wow.
I graduated in 1970. It was a 5-year school.
Right.
And for the whole time I was there until 1970, it was Drexel Institute of Technology.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. It's another Philly school. And you all know by now, this is Philadelphia. We're in Philadelphia. And David and I went to high school together, which was a pretty good high school class.
Yeah, it was.
And a lot of very interesting people. So you get out and you join the United States Air Force. And then something happens called the Vietnam War. It was already going on when you're in there, okay? And you fly these things. What do we have here?
Okay.
What are these?
So this is a T-38 trainer. If you put a gun on it and 1 or 2 other modifications, it turns into an F-5 fighter, which is a cool little airplane. But this airplane is It's just splendid. It's
And-
supersonic.
It is supersonic?
It.
And what's it called again for our listeners? Our viewers?
T-38 Talon is made by Northrop.
T-38 Talon.
Yeah.
So are they Northrop Grumman?
Northrop.
Northrop?
Yeah, Northrop Grumman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's U.S. Air Force.
Yeah.
So it's a trainer,
Mm-hmm.
but it could be turned into a combat aircraft.
Yes.
They just add guns.
Yeah, missiles and a couple. They make some few modifications, so you can pull more G's with it. But yeah, give
And
it a
it's
little more
supersonic.
thrust. Yeah, it's supersonic. Yeah, it's not Mach 2, but it's. I've had that airplane up to Mach 1.3. So
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty great little airplane. I love it's still to this day. If I can get one more ride in anything with a pointy front end and afterburners, it would be that. I loved it.
Listen, folks, if you can get David another ride in that,
I don't know my heart to
direct
do it anymore.
I'm just used to just the regular old. Well, I'd love to go into that. I'd love it.
Yeah.
Buckle up and Yahoo, man. That's it. So anyway, so you trained in that,
Yeah.
right?
Right. I also instructed in that for about almost 4 years.
Wow,
Yeah, I have about 1,000 hours in that airplane. It's just great.
man, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
It is.
Thank you. I didn't design it, but yeah.
But you did the model.
Well, I bought the model.
Oh, you bought the model. That's what I said. Well, you paid for the model.
Yeah, I paid for the
Yeah,
model.
yeah. So, man, it's just like, it almost reminds me of a dolphin for some reason.
Yeah. It's called a Coke bottle fuselage because it has that shape of a Coke bottle.
Yeah.
And that was the aerodynamic trend back. It's a 60s technology, or maybe even late 50s technology airplane. And it's really basic. It's a very basic jet.
But did they keep updating it?
They do. Just a couple months ago, I was down at Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio, and they still have these. They're no longer being flown by the training command, I think. I think now they belong to the tactical group, but these are still in operation.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how old are they? When were they first?
These were built mostly in the 60s.
Build something good, it becomes a classic.
That's right.
That's what it is.
It looks like it's going Mach 2 when it's sitting on the ramp.
I know. It's like a beautiful piece of machinery.
Yeah.
Don't you think so, Alex?
Mm-hmm. How come the wings are so far back?
It's depends on where you want the center of lift versus the center of gravity.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know I'm getting a little esoteric here, but the stability of the airplane depends on where. So, if you look at the center of gravity of an airplane, it might be here. I mean, this doesn't have engines in it. So, say the center of gravity is here, but the center of lift is here. So, as soon as you disturb the flight path, depending on how close these two are, it will affect the stability. So if an airplane like this, it's not really computer aided when you fly the airplane. So whatever you do, that's what the airplane does.
Really? It's not even
No.
today?
Well, I don't know about today.
Yeah.
There was no need for it back then.
Yeah.
But if you get the center of lift and the center of gravity closer together, like the F-16, that's when what the test pilots do is they'll pulse the stick. So they'll just take the stick, they'll go bump like that. And if the oscillation dampens out by itself, the airplane is stable. If the oscillation increases in amplitude, the airplane is unstable. So the reason you would want the airplane to be more unstable is because it's more maneuverable.
Oh, okay.
Trick is that if the airplane is too unstable, the human pilot cannot keep up with it. And that's why you need the fly-by-wire computer. So like the F-16.
Or the
Yeah.
117, right? Like, that couldn't be manual control. You needed the computers for some of the flying wing designs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
hmm I only know in terms of, like, cars and boats. Like, I know, like, if you want the rudder at the back, because a little change at the back will really swing that thing around. But it could also make it more unstable.
Right.
Right. Or like a forklift. You don't want to drive a forklift with those rear steer on the highway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can whip around in a parking lot.
That thing, when you were holding it up, that model,
Mm-hmm.
and I was looking directly at it from a frontal view, if you could just look straight at that and how cool that is. That is a great looking piece of machinery.
50% of the frontal area of that is the canopy.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Does
Pretty
the version with armaments have 2 seats as well?
No.
Yeah.
Single seat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it's the pilot is also the, what was it?
Weapons systems officer.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
That's what it said in
backseater.
the Army.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that obviously 2 seats, so you have an instructor. And
Oh, right.
the instructor, depending on what the student is learning, the instructor can sit either front or back seat.
It's
Most of the time, the instructor's in the back seat, students in the front seat.
As I'm looking at this, and it says USAF, so the United States Air Force. Originally, it was the Army Air Corps.
Mhm.
When did it switch from the Army Air Corps to the U.S. Air Force?
I believe that was 1947.
Really, after the war?
Yeah.
Okay. And we just happen to have been born then. Right.
I'm a 48 guy personally.
Oh, you're a 48er?
I'm a
47.
youngster.
That's true. You are. You are a youngster. That's amazing. That's amazing. You know. Now so you trained on this. What happened with that?
So this is the F-4 Phantom. It's a fighter. It's not a trainer. This airplane is much more capable. It's a Mach 2 fighter, but it's no longer flying. It's a 1960s airplane, basically. They made it into the 70s. They may have even made some in the 1980s, if I remember right. And they kept coming out with newer versions of this. This particular one, I think, is an E model. Yeah.
Who makes it?
McDonnell Douglas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it could carry, I think it was like 18,000 pounds of bombs. And, we hung bombs on it. You could carry like easily 6 bombs, 6 500-pound bombs, or you could put 750-pound bombs on there. We had missiles. We had AIM-7, AIM-9, Sparrow, and Sidewinder, radar-guided and heat-seeking missiles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the reliability of those missiles wasn't great. We would fire more than one missile at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Because chances are your first missile was going to go off, chase the sun or whatever.
But not the daughter.
Not the well, the biggest drawback but one of the oversights when this airplane it was originally a Navy airplane. And then the Air Force, after a little while, the Air Force decided to buy it, as did the Marine Corps, as did lots of countries around the world. The Iranians, interestingly enough.
They bought those?
Yeah, oh yeah. They're still, I wouldn't be surprised if they're still trying to fly some of them.
Those that are left.
Those that are left, right,
Yeah.
that they can get parts from.
We did take out the F-14s, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, when this airplane was conceived, the concept, the idea behind dogfighting was that all dogfighting is going to be, basically it's going to be non-existent anymore. There's going to be all beyond visual range, and you're going to lock them up on a radar, and you're going to say, that's a bad guy, missile, and the missile would take out the enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. So the dogfight, by the way, for the younger folks who may not know what it is, you can, it's two combat aircraft basically fighting with each other. They can see each other and they try to wipe each other out.
Correct.
Right in the air.
Yeah. So the idea was that, well, since we're so far away, that there's no need for a gun.
Right. Oh.
So this airplane was built without a gun. And after some engagements in Southeast Asia that were problematic, somebody said, we should probably put a gun on that. So they came up with a gun pod, and you would bolt the gun pod. We could do that with our D model F4s. We could put a gun pod on there, but it wasn't very good. It was not accurate because it basically bolted onto the airplane. So as soon as you pulled a couple G's, the thing would come out of alignment.
Right.
Subsequent model, the F4E model that was coming out like 1972, that had an internal gun. They took the same gun that we had in the gun pod, and they mounted it, or they built it inside. That was pretty effective, I hear. I never got to fly that.
Was that a 50 caliber?
No, 20 millimeter. Is it 20 millimeter cannon?
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
1,000 rounds a minute.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty fast.
Yeah, you'd go like you you didn't depress it. You just
Right.
tweak the trigger. You'd hear a little buzz, or you'd hear this buzz.
It's 1,000 rounds a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you held the trigger down, you'd ruin the thing.
Yeah.
Did you ever fly an A-10?
No.
Because they're all gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a gun. Somebody built an airplane around a gun.
Yeah, the opposite.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But even with the F4 though, I mean the concept starts with a radar, because that's the whole key of a fighter typically, is you start with a radar system and the weapon system, and how do we build the airplane around these things.
Yeah. I know that, and I may have mentioned this before, when I was in the Army, if you fired a 50 caliber machine gun, you're always with another buddy with you, and the barrel would get so hot, so you'd have to change it or it'd melt. And with 1,000 rounds a minute, is like, that thing's, doesn't it melt?
It could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So there was some restriction. I forget what it was, but you couldn't just leave the trigger depressed.
Man. So now you're in the military. I got some cheat sheet stuff.
All right.
Okay. So I want to talk to you about two things you got here: Panama and the Yom Kippur War. Okay. So let's start with Noriega.
Mm.
Okay. So you brought a lot of people. One of the problems in the world today, to me, is that people don't know history. They have no concept of history. They'll just watch things on Instagram or TikTok or whatever and believe it, right? They have no concept of what set that whole thing up, how far back you have to go to understand the situation. And we see it right now today. People protesting have no idea what they're protesting about because they're just ignorant. I mean, they may be intelligent people, but they're just ignorant, right? So they might not even know about Panama and what happened in Panama and how we had to take out Noriega, correct? And
Correct.
you were part of that.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. The part that I can describe is just my
Yeah,
part in it.
yeah,
I was based at Travis Air Force Base in Northern California, flying this C-5.
this here.
Yeah, this big jet. And our wartime mission was to take the 7th Light Infantry Division to war. And they were based basically down the road at Fort Ord, California, which
No, yeah.
wasn't too far away. So, I guess it was right around Christmas, 1989. And
Wow.
we, or, I forget if it was 89 or 90. It might have been 90, I think.
Okay.
No, it had
No.
to have been 89.
Yeah,
89,
I think it was 89
Yeah, it
because
was
90
89.
already we were starting in Iraq.
Right.
Yeah.
So my squadron got a phone call that we needed to take, we needed a crew with this qualification and, all these different qualifications. So I was one of the pilots who could do that, and I actually got to pick hand pick the rest of my crew,
Wow.
that was kind of cool.
That is cool.
So we got an intelligence brief, and I'll never forget the intel guy walks in. He's got a copy of Aviation Week, which I had already read,
Yeah, I get it.
and he says, "Okay," he says, "you guys are you're going down to Panama. You're taking the 7th Light ID down there." And,
ID is infantry.
yeah,
division.
infantry division.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were going to have you land at there's a Howard Air Force Base down in Panama, but for some reason we couldn't land there. So we had to land these guys at the international airport, which is fascinating because I believe that's called an invasion. So he shows us a slide, and it's satellite imagery, and it's the runway at the airport, and there's swamp on one end leading out to the Pacific Ocean to the west, and to the east of the airport are some mountains, and he says, "We think that you should come in over these mountains because, you should." Yeah, he says these mountains are kind of rugged, and we believe that you'd be safer flying your approach over the mountains. And I remember I just looked at my co-pilot, this guy Wayne Lessig, and I looked at old Wayne. And I said, so we left that briefing. I said, "We're not doing that." I said, "You moron." I said, I could get up in those mountains with small arms. I'm not going. But I went through pilot training in Valdosta, Georgia, next to the Okefenokee Swamp.
Oh,
and
I know it.
I was a little familiar with the swamp. And if you're in the swamp, you're tough.
Yeah.
I figured somebody in the swamp, he's tougher than I am. He's probably going to get me anyway. So we came in over the swamp. Anyway, back up. So we get all the military vehicles. So that the 7th Light Infantry Division had these Humvee, the Hummers, the military part.
The real ones.
The real ones, right.
Yeah.
And they loaded them on our airplane. And these guys sat in the back, these troop seats I'd been talking about. And the commander was a full colonel, and he was sitting behind me at the nav station. By this time, we no longer had navigators on board because we had inertial navigation. And so anyway, the initial part of the flight was kind of busy, and we were air refueling. And after we got done with the air refueling, we were all kind of laid back, and guys are lighting up cigarettes. And so finally I turned around and I asked this colonel, the troop commander, I said, my briefing was kind of worthless. I said, "How was your briefing?" And he says, "I didn't get it yet."
Whoa.
Yeah. So I said, "Sir, you know that we don't have secure communications on the, we didn't have any secure radios."
Right.
So he said, "I'll get it an hour out." He said, "Anybody who hears it, it's like, by an hour, with an hour," he said, "they can't do anything anyway within 1 hour." So fine.
That's
So,
weird.
Yeah. So sure enough, bigger in Dallas, about an hour out. Crank up the HF radios, and I get a phone patch with the command post back at Travis Air Force Base, and they had one or two other people on. I didn't know who all he was talking to, but it was actually, it was almost a little bit like a comedy routine. They started out using tactical call signs, and then it devolved into, so Joe, is that you? Yeah, okay. So
Real secure. Yeah. If it's not you, tell me who it is, okay?
Okay. So the briefing that this guy's getting is that it wasn't just these. It wasn't just the 7th Light Infantry Division. There were lots of different organizations involved in this. And I'm listening to the conference he's having, and the guy back in the command post, some general, is telling him that these guys from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, their airplane broke, so they're still sitting on the ground, and some other guys are having some problem, like their weapons were on a separate airplane, which...
Wait, they lost their luggage?
Yeah, kind of, they lost their... Yeah, I mean...
But their luggage happened to be weapons.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm kind of getting out of this is they're telling this guy, you're on your own.
Wow.
And remember, I turned around and I looked at him, and he's sitting back in the nav chair, kind of like this. And he has this push-to-talk switch. He's got the headset, and he just had his eyes like 2/3 closed, and he just goes, Roger.
Wow.
It's like, you're on your own. He goes, Roger. Oh, whoa. One tough guy, yeah. So anyway, we flew our arrival over the swamp, like I said, and there was no air traffic control.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Into the international airport?
Yeah.
Did you ever figure out why the heck they went into the international airport instead of the Air Force Base?
I don't really know, and I should have. Turns out that years later, a guy who lived directly across the cul-de-sac from me, he was part of that. He was the Army part.
Right, okay.
And we had both, and he didn't explain why, but I think it had something to do with the fact that they were able to shoot up the airfield the night before.
Yeah, okay.
Because when we landed, I saw that all the windows in the terminals were shot out, and there were some parachutes hanging in trees around the airport.
Okay.
So that we knew that an invasion force had been in there the night before.
I get it.
And so we came in, we landed, we pulled off the runway,
Mm-hmm.
and this airplane, the C-5, like the front end opens up and the back end opens up, and they drove all their Jeeps or their Humvees off the airplane. There was tall grass around the airport, and they disappeared into this tall grass.
Wow.
And I remember the loadmaster called me up, and he said, "Sir, I don't think there's anybody left on the airplane." And we said, "Well, let's get the hell out of here." Because we still had the engines running.
Right.
And the only thing I saw that I really didn't like was while we were sitting there on the ground, somebody launched a smoke grenade. And the last time I saw a smoke grenade was in Southeast Asia, and it was somebody getting windage for a mortar round.
Oh, okay.
So
I get
I
it.
kind of remembered,
Let's
smoke
get the hell
grenade,
outta here.
bad. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
get the hell, yeah. So we closed everything up, turned around, and blasted off back out over the swamp.
Then you headed up to California again?
No, we limped back to Oklahoma to
Oh.
Tinker Air Force Base in
Tinker.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, I've actually been there. Not inside the base, but up to the gates of Tinker. Yeah. Big. It's a big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a little aside, this guy who I mentioned briefly, who was my neighbor, the reason he was part of this operation was he's American-born Chinese. He's ethnic Chinese.
Right.
And being in the Army, he went to the Defense Language Institute at in Monterey. And even though it's ostensibly to learn foreign languages, all the allies trained there also. So the idea is to forge relationships. He forged a relationship with the Panamanian general, who was Noriega's right-hand man. There are a lot of Asians in Central America.
Yes, from China.
Well, also from after the
Japan.
railroads were built here.
Yes.
The Chinese didn't have a lot to do, so a lot of them went to Central America. So he had the same last name as this general. So he got himself and he developed this relationship. He wound up being stationed in Panama as part of like the attaché, military attaché. And
Wow.
this Panamanian general introduced him to Noriega, and he was the general was kidding around, introduced him as his nephew. Noriega became he liked this guy, my neighbor, and my neighbor was able to figure out, well, here's when he has coffee, here's when he has breakfast, here. That's why he was a big part of this operation.
Man, so they cultivated their own infiltration.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy is that? And I'm sure it happens all over.
I'm sure.
Yeah, they cultivated that. So then you went back, all right? So this was 89, right?
Mm-hmm.
89. Before that, there was another war. Well, the world is always at war. There's always a war that you could pick out at any time.
That's right.
It was called the Yom Kippur War in 1973.
Yeah.
That's when the surrounding nations of Israel invaded it, okay? That time around. I mean, it's constant. It's always happened. How did you get involved in that? What was it drug you into that?
I had just transitioned from Phantoms, from F4s, to transports when I came back to this country. And I was flying
from Southeast Asia.
From Southeast, right.
Right.
And I was flying sort of the little brother of this thing, which was the C-141, which was the precursor of the C-17.
Okay.
And I was at
And
McGuire.
this is the C5.
This
right?
is the C5,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So 17 smaller.
Yeah,
And
and
the
the
other one.
C-141 is the same size as it kind of looks like a C-17 without the winglets.
Okay.
Anyway, I was at McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey, and I was in Yom Kippur services, and a guy walks in military uniform. He says, "I hate to disturb the services, but all you flyers need to report to your squadrons now." So
Damn.
we did. And they told us to go home, pack 30 days worth of clothes, and come back and be there 3 o'clock or whatever. We got on an airplane, wound up at Lodge's Air Base in the Azores, and that's where the U.S. had all of its supplies at Lodge's. And we were flying resupply missions out of the Azores. When you went to fly from the Azores off the coast,
Africa, right?
yeah, it's actually off the coast of Portugal, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Portugal.
So
But it's a Portuguese. Yeah, they're Portuguese.
right, it's
Yeah,
Portuguese, yeah. So you had to fly through the Straits of Gibraltar,
Mhm.
and the way the airspace is structured, the European airspace for each country obviously extends south over the Med.
Mhm.
The African airspace for each country extends north, and where they meet, they usually just draw a straight line, and it's not east-west, but you know.
Right.
And because we were resupplying the Israelis, absolutely nobody wanted us in their airspace.
No surprise there.
Right,
Yeah.
no surprise. So we had to fly the zigzag line down the Mediterranean, to Israel, and we were going into Lod Airport in Tel Aviv.
Mm-hmm.
We got a briefing before we took off that in case you have an emergency and need to divert and like engine catches fire or whatever. First, don't go into Italy, then don't go into Spain, then don't go into France. Obviously, you're not going to land in Morocco or Libya or anything,
Right.
But, I remember being shocked back then that, what do you mean we can't land in France?
It's the same today.
Yeah.
It's the same today.
Right.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah. And the one place that would be happy to accept us was the Netherlands.
Really?
We could go to Amsterdam. I mean, getting there, that was different.
Right. Because it's not on the Mediterranean,
Right.
that's for sure.
But, yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, we flew down the Med, and I remember seeing the U.S., I forget if it was the 6th or 7th Fleet, who was ever in the Mediterranean, and they and the Russian fleet were circling each other.
Oh,
You
man.
could look down, you could see that. We were briefed we were going to pick up fighter escort, Israeli F-4s, about an hour out. So about an hour out, we're looking around. We don't see anybody out there. So we did something clever. We called them up on the radio, said something brilliant like, "Hey, are you there?" And nobody said anything. We went, well. And then all of a sudden we turned around, and in between the numbers 1 and 2 engines, like right in between here, there's an Israeli F-4 sitting there.
Wow.
Yeah. So those guys, they didn't mess. They maintained radio silence,
Holy
but
smokes.
they were there. So
Damn.
we descended into Lod Airport in Tel Aviv, and we had, I don't even remember what our cargo was. I guess it was the normal bombs and blood and whatever, The Israelis took fantastic care of us. It was hot. It was hot that day in Tel Aviv, and they sent an air-conditioned bus out to pick up the officers. It was me, my co-pilot, or I was a co-pilot. They picked up the pilots and navigator, and they took us into base operations where they had tables like these, and these tables were full of sandwiches and cold cuts and trinkets and
Wow.
little keychains, and on the bulletin board there were letters from Israeli school kids. "Dear American pilot, thank you for
Wow.
saving our country."
Wow.
I did the same thing for the enlisted, who had to stay out at the airplane because they were the
Right.
engineers and load masters. But they brought out an air-conditioned bus with basically the same thing for the enlisted.
That's beautiful.
And when you compare that to other countries where, like, if we flew resupply missions, like after an earthquake or whatever, we would offload the cargo as, "Thanks, get the hell out of here." And the Israelis were so appreciative.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I know that the Israelis are in Venezuela now, helping with the recovery of the earthquakes.
Okay.
So they do that. And they have a certain group that goes into countries when they have major natural disasters. They did it in Turkey. We like to go to Turkey. We've been there many times, but the region is now a bit unstable. But and they, after the major Turkish earthquakes, the Israelis went in, and then they had to get out right away because they were being harassed, which is sad.
Yeah.
But they were helping out. So that's very interesting. That's a whole different kind of consciousness on their part.
Yeah.
And then, so before all that, well, you were in that. That's when you were in the Vietnam War as well, right? You were in both wars.
Yeah.
So, what was it like flying and being involved in the Vietnam War, which they call the American War in Vietnam, right? In the Vietnam War with Cambodia and Laos, and before that it was called the French Indochina, that whole thing, and Dien Bien Phu when the French got out, or maybe it's Dien Bien Phu, but and here we are in there. What was that like?
We knew that the way the war was being prosecuted was dumb. And there was a lot of frustration with that.
Yeah.
Don't attack this target, don't attack that target. Your ingress route needs to be this, and you can only... There were so many restrictions that we felt it was kind of stupid, but we were all gung ho,
Right.
and you had to fully buy into what you were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was, to be fair, Dan, I didn't have a full tour over there.
Right.
So I can't give you quite the sense that somebody, like I wasn't there for a full year.
Right.
I was there for less. And the guys who were there for longer probably would have a more intelligent observation than mine, or more like a little deeper. But it's like you knew that what you were doing was part of the team, and you believed in what you were doing, and you knew that when you looked around, these other guys were depending on you to do your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of it, it gets your attention when people are shooting at you.
I know that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's very distracting, among other things. And if you're trying to fly an airplane,
Yes.
Prefer to not be distracted, but
Correct.
if you're 24 years old flying in a fighter, it's
Yeah.
man, it's a rush.
And you flew out of where?
I was out of Thailand, Korat Air Base, Thailand.
Thailand.
Yeah.
So you flew. Let me see. I'm looking at figuring out where Thailand is. I know Cambodia is next to Vietnam. Laos is next to Vietnam.
Yeah, and then Thailand's on the other side of that.
On the other side of Cambodia, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you had to fly over Cambodia and then to get into Vietnam, North Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were constantly in enemy territory.
Yeah.
That must be tough.
Yeah. You had to pay attention. There were always a lot of other air assets that were airborne at the same time as you were, and you needed to make sure that you had an idea of where a tanker was. And, there was AB triple, what do they call it? Airborne Command Control. So they played a part. And
You mean the Army? Airborne?
No,
No.
Air Force.
Air Force.
The Army had air assets
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
We
yeah.
could not talk to them directly because they were on FM radios, if I remember right. And we
What?
didn't- Yeah.
What you needed to do, Dave, was get a 4-year-old British girl to get on that radio, and that would have.
Yeah, actually, I tell you, the Vietnam, that was the helicopter war.
Yeah.
So, guys like Bray, Eric Bray, he would probably have more of a realistic sense. It's like I sort of hesitate a little bit to say I'm a Vietnam veteran because that's misleading. I didn't have the same kind of experience that those guys who were in country actually had.
In country and in combat. Actually.
Yeah. So like the guy, again, like Bray and Lee Asger was on one of those boats.
Yeah, going up the river.
Yeah, so those guys, they were more in the thick of things.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you say Vietnam vet, everybody pictures somebody with muddy boots walking through a rice paddy with an M7, and I didn't do that.
No, you were, and anybody that was in the military during that time, okay, is a Vietnam era vet.
Yeah.
That's what, like people will say to me, were you in Vietnam? I said, no, I wasn't deployed. It was just, but Vietnam era, as opposed to Eric and Lee, they were real Vietnam vets.
Right.
But when, the interesting thing is, and during that time, because I experienced it, was how the country was so divided, and coming back, did you experience anything like that?
Not as much from the Air Force part.
Okay.
Fred Silberman.
Yeah.
Fred, he was in the Navy then, and Fred, he was treated very badly.
When he got home.
Yeah. A lot of the guys, really, if you talk to a Vietnam vet, not for us guys, but everybody, it's fashionable these days to say thanks for your service.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
And it's like, don't thank me for like if you're talking to an old Vietnam era guy, the nicest thing to say to him is welcome home.
Yeah.
That's much more meaningful than thanks for your service.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember when I got off the airplane from Leonard Wood, combat engineer training, I made sure I wasn't wearing my uniform to walk through the airport. That's how crazy it was.
Yeah.
Because people would yell at you, scream. They didn't know what you really thought about the war. Okay,
Right.
You may be against the war, but you were serving. All right, so I made sure I wasn't wearing my uniform.
Yeah, I mean, I flew into a military base, so it didn't matter to me.
Right.
But I mean, there were a lot of guys who came home from Southeast Asia on commercial flights,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. But now it's kind of a crazy time now.
mm-hmm.
And I do have a nephew through marriage who's in the Air Force, and he's a good guy, and he just re-upped, and I'm proud of him. He's doing what he's supposed to do. I see him occasionally on when we have family things, but as we're getting older, and these stories, and they are, for lack of a better term, war stories. There's stories about wars that people were involved in a circuitous way, in a direct way, in a tertiary way. They go away. They die off. They have to be chronicled somehow or another. And hopefully enough books or movies, real documentary movies, are there, because a lot of the vets, Vietnam vets or whatever, Korea vets, the World War II vets, most of them are gone, even though we were born shortly after the war. They have to be taken care of, whether you agree with what they did or don't agree with what they did. They still serve the country,
Right.
and they can't be left out on the street. They can't be begging for food and stuff like that.
Right.
So all these veterans organizations, from my estimation, have to be supported, and the vets have to be supported. That's important. That's my philosophy, because I've seen and you've seen what they have gone through or heard what they've gone through. Because I remember guys that were freaking out in basic training, literally freaking out that they had to go to Vietnam. They knew where they were going. And it was, and I remember one guy specifically really totally lost it. And I, I felt for him. Well, anyway, well, wait a minute now. We spent a lot of time talking about that. We spent a lot of time talking about commercial flights. But what was it, if I can go back, and I know we're running long, but to me this is really a great show today. I want to thank you, David. Really, and I may be repeating myself, but when you got out and you got into Alaska Airlines, how did you pick Alaska?
I had a very good old friend, Tom Stassen. Lost him a couple years ago, unfortunately, but I had known Tom for years. Tom was super smart, and I never saw him make a serious mistake. And Tom retired 4 months before I did out of the Air Force. Tom went to work for Alaska Airlines, and I thought, that's probably a good idea. Why don't I look at that? So, and Tom had gotten hired with them, so he wrote a letter reference which got me an interview, and went up and applied and got hired.
Where did you go to apply?
Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah.
Is their home base Seattle?
Yes.
Or Anchorage?
Alaska is that's their home. Their corporate headquarters and their main base is Seattle. They also have bases in Anchorage and Los Angeles and
Right.
I guess now Portland and San Francisco, I think.
So it's really just a name.
Yeah.
They could have called it Western Airlines or
Right.
Eastern Airlines.
Right.
They called it Alaska Airlines.
Well, but they historically they did start out in Alaska.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean back in the 1930s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we were really young. So you get in. Okay. What was it like transitioning from military to civilian?
Oof.
Yeah. And those, what 766, 737s?
Yeah. Well, first I flew 727s, and then I flew 737s.
Okay.
The airline flying is much more gentlemanly. Probably the toughest thing for me was I went from being a pilot to being an engineer on a 727 because it's all seniority in the airline.
Right.
And at the time, they still had, like I said, 727s, and the engineer sits sideways, and you had this panel in front of you. This 727, I mean, it's what we called an old steam jet. And the engineer had all the switches for the systems and controlled the fuel system and the electrical and hydraulics and whatever else. But you didn't have a window.
Wow.
So I was terrible. I was a horrible engineer. I can't believe the captains let me live. But so I did that for less than a year. But it took a little bit of getting used to, just some differences in kind of like corporate culture.
Yeah. So, but then how'd you get bumped up?
Is seniority, you bid for the next opening. So I wanted to be the next step would be to go from engineer to first officer, which is co-pilot. And I did, and you practice flying the airplane, take a check ride, and they go, okay, partner, there you go. And you get put on the schedule as a first officer.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And then what led you to be a pilot?
I never got to upgrade to captain on the 727 because they retired. The Alaska Airlines got rid of the 727s. and we transitioned to all 737s. So I went from first officer on the 727 to first officer on the 737. That was interesting because that was one of the early airplanes with a flight management computer.
Okay. Yeah.
So learning the computer technology, I mean, that was the whole trick of the 737.
What year was this?
1991 or 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Early 90s, yeah. A lot of the older guys on the 727, they looked at that computer stuff and they said, I think I'll retire. And they did. They didn't want anything to do with the computer stuff. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And so you did that, and then you became a pilot, right?
Well, they're both pilots.
Oh, okay.
Both the co-pilot, the first officer, and the captain, both, you take turns flying the airplane.
Right, I get you.
Most trips.
Right.
And quite frankly, most of the first officers they're pretty good, and they can fly. Their manual flying skills, they can fly the airplane probably as well as most captains.
Wow.
They're not the decision maker.
Right.
They're not in charge.
Yeah. So you're there for 20 years.
Yeah.
After being in the military for 20 years.
Yeah.
Man, and you're only 42. How did that happen? You
Right.
started when you were 2 years old? It's
Yeah.
amazing. So so you flew a 737, that's Boeing, right?
Yeah.
Boeing.
Boeing.
The whole time,
Hmm.
right? All those years.
Well, after the 727.
How long was it before they got rid of that?
They got rid of it in like 92, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, because they called me about buying one, and I offered them $500 down, but they said no. So I figured the hell of it. So you stayed with that for 20 years.
Mhm.
First officer, captain.
Yeah, I was. It took me 9 years to upgrade to captain,
Wow.
and I took the first upgrade I could get in Seattle, because I was living in Seattle or near Seattle, not in, but I was living near Seattle, and I didn't want to commute. I commuted for the first, I don't know, 2 or 3 years.
Commute from where to where?
I was living in Northern California because I'd been
Oh.
in the Air Force.
Right.
So my house was in Northern California. I was flying out of Seattle, and a lot of airline pilots, probably half of them, commute because airlines typically have bases all around the country, if not around the world.
Right.
And you can fly out of, like if you're flying for American or Delta or something, like, you might fly out of Houston or Phoenix or wherever, but you might do that for a couple of years and then say you can get a better position on like a bigger airplane or go from first officer to captain, which is a significant pay raise, but not where you're living. So all of a sudden, like now you have to fly out of New York, but
You're living in Houston.
you're living in Houston, right?
So what do? You catch a flight from?
Yeah.
you catch a
So
flight
first
from-
you have to get from Houston to New York. So most of those guys, they wind up with a crash pad in New York,
I got you.
and that gets very tiring.
Yeah.
So I decided I didn't want to do that, so I just moved up to Seattle.
This is so interesting. These are things that people have no idea about,
Yeah.
unless they're in aviation, in one form or another. Was it a major difference to go from military to commercial?
Yeah, it is a big difference, but it's not shocking.
Right.
There's very little that takes you by surprise.
Right.
It's typically a friendlier environment, or it's more gentlemanly. Let me put it like that.
In commercial.
In commercial flying, right?
Because when I think about the military, like you referred to earlier, it's the 4-year-old girl comes up to what do you call it? And it's the guys like, give me a drink, not alcohol maybe,
Yeah.
but let me have a smoke, and it's more like casual.
Yeah.
You know, it's friendly. All the guys are on the crew. Okay, they're just hanging out. In commercial, it's more structured. I think more professional, as you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still that's the crew. But,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, and each military unit is different. So, so some are more cohesive than others, and the airlines are kind of the same way. Each airline apparently has its own personality.
Yeah.
One day I was having breakfast in Oakland. We were staying in the layover hotel down near the airport, and that's where all the airlines used to lay over there. And I was just in street clothes, and the waiter comes over, and we'd get an airline discount, and so I said, "Hey, I'm airline," and he says, "Yeah." He says, "You fly for Alaska." I said, "How'd you know that?" He says, "Yeah, you guys all fit the mold." So he says, so what? He says, "Yeah, Alaska, like you guys, you're always either hiking or kayaking or fishing." And he says, like the Southwest guy, they want to party, and the United guys are, more formal, and Delta's still in the military, and he was right.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we've talked about so many times in this podcast in Digging for Gold. It's about the culture.
Yeah.
You got to fit into the culture of the company. Either you fit in or you're not there.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with commercial. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Who would think that? Except for Southwest, where the pilots get on and tell a joke, okay? And the flight attendants are funny. But outside of that, I don't know if you've ever flown Turkish Air. Turkish Air is when you're, depending on what class you're in seating, they literally have chefs with a chef hat and all the finest food. It's great. Lufthansa has their thing, that I'll never forget. There is a soda company, a ginger ale company. They make ginger ale and it's called Goldberg. So I'm on the flight, and I knew it. I had it in different hotels, and the flight attendant says, "Can I get you this thing?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like a Goldberg soda, ginger ale." So he brings me the whole bag of them, and he said, "Here, these are for you because you're Goldberg. I know that." So I brought them home, and I gave them to my brother and my best friend, whose name is Goldberg, Ronnie. I had lunch with him yesterday, and my son, and I just gave them out to anybody named Goldberg. I still have it. So it's very, you can tell who's formal, who's laid back, but also I think it depends on how many people are on the plane, right? I mean, in that specific, in Lufthansa, it was not a heavy load, so I could lay out on the row, and the guy could come sit with me, the flight attendant. But in the military, here's a question for you. How were the crews, and I would assume they were, co-ed?
Yes.
They were co-ed in the
Yes.
military. But not like in commercial. Am I right? There's more, I would think that there's more women in commercial than in military.
Yeah, there are more women commercial airline pilots now.
I just took one.
Okay.
I just took a flight back from western Florida, okay, and the pilot was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for American. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of women are just
Good.
one of the best pieces of aviation common sense that I've ever seen was this gal Christie, who was pilot at Alaska when I first got hired there, and we were arriving at a Boeing 727. I was an engineer, and the weather had deteriorated in Seattle. We had to divert, and that's a very, very busy time. You're approaching the airport, you're trying to divert, so you have to talk to your dispatch section who has all the information. They know like what the weather is, where you can go.
Yeah.
Because like, if you're going to divert, like, where do you go? Do you have enough fuel to get there? What's the weather like when you get there? Can they handle your airplane? Do they have stairs to push up?
Yeah.
So she had to talk to our dispatch section. The first officer was flying the airplane and talking to air traffic control. No, first officer was flying the airplane, and she had me talk to air traffic control. Because I was a qualified pilot, so, and she basically reassigned duties, which I thought was absolutely brilliant for her.
Wow, it is. Times have changed.
Yeah.
It used to be that the pilots were all men,
Mm-hmm.
and the stewardesses were women. That's it. Now it's flight attendants, and it's men and women, and the pilots and first officers, men or women, doesn't matter. And it took a long time to get there.
The flight attendants quite often are underrated, in my opinion, where they're viewed as just, bring me a Coke or, scotch or whatever. But I had a flight attendant on a flight tell me that the airplane was making a strange noise, and turned out that there was a reason it was making a strange noise. Something had broken out on the wing. Part of the structure had actually mechanically failed.
Wow.
And after we landed, I had maintenance look at it, and they said, yeah, that thing's messed up.
Wow.
And if she hadn't said anything to me, I would not have known it.
Yeah, and who knows if that flight would have taken off for another place.
It would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, the flight attendants, they go through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They go through a lot. And
They're-
they're underappreciated.
Yeah, they're really great at, or at least the gals that are the flight attendants at Alaska. They're terrific at solving people problems.
Yeah.
This person wants to sit with that person, and
Yeah.
they do a great job.
Did you ever have an emergency on a flight? Someone get really sick? Someone have a heart attack?
Yeah.
Things like that?
Yeah.
What's that like?
I imagine that probably most airlines have this now, but you have to remember I retired like
Right.
2010, been a little while. But Alaska had this system where you talk on the radio to somebody back in Seattle who they phone patch you into this medical service. So the Alaska Airlines airplanes, all their jets have a headset in the back of the airplane that a flight attendant or a medical person back there attending a patient or somebody in distress, they get on the radio, they talk directly to somebody on the ground in this medical center, basically, so they can analyze what the medical problem is and then recommend a course of action
Wow.
for the pilot. So say somebody's having a heart attack, and it's
Right.
and this, for some reason, this always happens in the middle of the night. So, passengers in some kind of distress. Doctor on board says, yeah, I think this is whatever. And the medical guy on the ground says, well, this doesn't sound too severe. You can go on to your destination. Or, no, this person needs to seek medical attention now. In which case, then I would get back on the radio, and my dispatch section would say, okay, you can go into Denver or Grand Junction or, wherever
Yeah.
it is. And they have to know, okay, what's the weather? Can your airplane land there? Can they refuel you if you get there? Is there a medical facility nearby? So, and then you come up with a course of action.
And that has happened to you?
Yeah, more than once.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like you got to find a doctor on board sometimes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
sometimes there's not a doctor on board.
Right. Yeah. Usually there's somebody with some kind of medical training.
Yeah, because when somebody says, is there a doctor on board, I say yes, but I can only tell you what academic journal to read. Yeah. So it's got to be a medical doctor. And, man, I often wonder about that.
Mhm.
Did you ever have a thing where you ran out of food? Or you
Right.
ran out of, simple things like food, the galley?
Yeah.
No, never had a problem with that?
The only time that ever happened was we had diverted. We were supposed to. We were coming in from Anchorage to Seattle, and we couldn't get to Seattle because the weather was too bad. We were supposed to land at like 6 in the morning, and it was fogged in. So we landed at, I think we went into some little airport in southeast Alaska, and they didn't have enough. They didn't have any food for us because they weren't expecting us.
Right.
And after we took off out of, when the weather finally got better, and we took off like 4 hours later, there was no food for that flight. But
Wow.
outside of that, no.
Yeah. So it's really like the only medical thing, the only emergencies are like medical.
Yeah, or you have to have enough water.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have water. And if you don't have enough water, then,
You got problems.
yeah, that's serious.
So fortunately,
Yeah,
we have enough
fortunately,
water.
That's right.
And with that, David Laxx, Lieutenant Colonel Laxx, Captain Laxx. That's right. You're a Lieutenant Colonel one thing and a captain another, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. This has been a great podcast. I've learned so much. I mean, it's questions that I think people have, but they never get to ask about commercial flights or military flights. And if you have any comments or questions, post them below in our comment section, and I will try to get a hold of David and ask him the questions, and maybe I can pass them on to you guys. But David Laxx, man, terrific. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. This has been great.
My
Great.
pleasure.
Folks,
Well,
David Laxx has been our wonderful guest today.
you know how there's a fighter pilot in the bar?
How?
He'll tell you.
That's great. Oh, God. This has been what episode, Alex? 59, isn't it? Episode 59 in Digging for Gold. Don't forget, subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify. And remember this, use your mind. If you don't, others will. Thanks again. We'll see you next time on Digging for Gold.